Ultimately, I consider it my professional imperative to tell the audience oh, it's an enormous amount of pressure. But ultimately, I can't let that dissuade me from controlling what I can control and collecting all the necessary intel to help my audience make well-informed decisions when it comes time to put pen to paper. You've got to understand that I'm not doing this because it's easy. I'm doing it for the love of the game.
What's up, folks? Welcome to March. And welcome to HuPAC Talk, where today we find ourselves with Championship Week and Selection Sunday squarely in the rearview mirror. Now it's time to turn our attention and look ahead to that glorious and scintillating action that's going to unfold on the hardwood over the following 3 weeks. And who better than I, your host, HuPAC, to guide you on this glorious journey to Indianapolis. Without further ado, let's dig into the 3 major storylines that are going to dominate the discourse surrounding the 2026 NCAA Tournament. Starting off with injuries. Because let me tell you, folks, there were a lot of them to key figures on a lot of teams with national championship aspirations. Texas Tech's season had seemed to turn a corner. After a number of close losses in conference play, they had just beaten Arizona and Tucson and were starting to find their stride when JT Toppin tore his ACL. The stud forward, unfortunately, tore his anterior cruciate ligament. I don't remember who they were playing in that game, but ultimately what it meant was, Texas Tech was no longer viewed as a national championship threat. Over the next few games, Texas Tech really didn't miss a beat. Christian Anderson, the stud guard, stepped up. Donovan Atwell stepped up. Lawan Watts and Jalen Petty delivered from distance. And all of a sudden, we're talking about Texas Tech in a totally different light. However, they did slip a bit. And now they're a 5 seed, and now they're playing 12-seeded Akron, upset-minded Akron. What does this mean for Texas Tech going forward? It certainly kind of lowered their ceiling, I think, as far as their overall competitiveness in the field. But I still think this is a team that can go far. But can it go as far as it could have with JT Toppin? Highly doubtful. The second major injury to a key figure, Caleb Wilson at UNC. This guy was having an absolutely incredible freshman year in Chapel Hill when unfortunately he broke his thumb in a freak incident during a practice while he was trying to recover from another injury. This followed a huge win over Duke in Chapel Hill. Seth Trimble hit a huge game-winning 3. And it was starting to look like UNC, once they got Wilson back, might again be a viable contender. But fortunately, they slipped out. And following a disappointing exit in the ACC tournament to Clemson, it seems highly doubtful they're going to be able to go deep in March. However, it's Seth Trimble and Henry Vasar's years, and they're going to be damned if they don't get UNC as far as they possibly can, because those guys are absolutely big-time competitors, and they're going to do what they can. But big-time blow to a team with championship aspirations. And now they've got a really tough first matchup in the tournament as a 6 seed versus 11-seeded VCU. The Rams are headlined by Terrence Hill Jr. and Lazar Djokovic, who are both prolific scorers. Djokovic is a great shot blocker around the rim. He's going to have his hands full with Vasar, of course, but this is a team that has depth. They have a lot of offensive explosiveness, and they have big-time outside shooters. They showcased that in their Atlantic 10 tournament run, where they won the tournament, in a conference that I think is perennially underrated. Finally, the last injury on this list maybe isn't as impactful as the others, simply because the player who was injured doesn't have the same impact. The other 2 players were the best players on their team. This guy rides the bench. But he's a key figure nonetheless, because LJ Kaysen at Michigan headlined a second unit, probably the best in the country. Michigan is still deep, but there are starting to be questions surrounding their viability as a title contender following his injury. He tore his ACL. He's going to redshirt next season. I don't know if Will Shetter, Nimari Burnett, and Roddy Gale are going to be able to pick up the slack in his absence, because they weren't able to do it during the Big Ten tournament. when Michigan barely squeaked past Ohio State, needed a last-second three to knock off Wisconsin in the semifinals, and then lost in the final to a Duke team that doesn't really seem to have any big-time, rim protectors. I'm not really sure what the plan was in that game because Dusty May, while a fantastic coach who's turned around that program after Juwan Howard ran it into the ground, didn't really seem to know what to do yesterday with his big men. I mean, come on. We've got Ademar. The guy's 7'3". Just feed the ball to him. I guarantee you Oscar freaking Clough isn't stopping that man down low. He's got a beautiful little drop step. He's got a nice hook shot. He can get right to the rim. He can flush it with absolutely no effort. Oh, and did I include the fact that they've got Morez Johnson crashing the backboards? Sure, he might have had his hands full with Trey Kaufman-Renn, but what the hell is going on in Ann Arbor right now? It's a little concerning, is all I'm saying. They've still got an elite starting unit. They're still a 1 seed, but there are questions surrounding Michigan's, their viability here because, well, frankly, they didn't showcase it in the Big Ten tournament. Those are the 3 big injuries I want to highlight here. 2 of them, big-time injuries. Although I will say Texas Tech has shown remarkable resilience, like I said, in JT Toppin's absence. UNC a little less so in Caleb Wilson's. Michigan, though, they're starting to be a little doubt creeping in. They had the close loss to Duke in that bizarre but entertaining game in Washington, D.C. about a month and a half ago. I don't know. What does this mean for Michigan? You would think LJ Kaysen, he's just one more piece on a very deep bench. Well, he's their leading scorer on that bench, and in his absence, they've really failed to have the same punch, the same firepower. I'm not, frankly, that scared of Michigan going forward. They're still a dangerous team, yes, but I don't know. They seem to have lost a little bit of their edge following one of the most dominant early stretches of non-conference play ever seen. Another big storyline in this tournament is Nebraska. Nebraska, famously, is the only team in the power conferences to have never won an NCAA tournament game. This year, they were fantastic. They stormed out to this 20-0 start to their season under Fred Hoiberg, but they're only 6-6 since then. A little bit of that is cold shooting. They seem to have lost a little bit of their mojo, a little bit of their momentum, maybe some confidence lacking in some key figures like Riank Mast and Price Sanford. But this team still has a lot of firepower. They're still a 4 seed. They should be able to get to the second weekend. First, they've got to beat Troy. Troy knows about this, this reality with Nebraska failing to win a game in all the times, they've been to the tournament, including the times they've been there as a high seed. Troy's going to be out for blood. And, Troy themselves have a very high-powered offense. They have 2 games where they scored over 100 points, a 1-point win over San Diego State and a 1-point loss to USC. So, Troy's no pushover. It's going to be very entertaining to see kind of how that game unfolds. And if Fred Hoiberg can finally break the ice and get a key win for the Cornhuskers. Finally, another storyline I want to look at, and maybe this is a little bit overwrought because I know there's been a lot of discussion about the seeding and the way that everything played out over the final 2 days of championship week and kind of how those results impacted the seeding on Selection Sunday. But Duke got screwed by the selection committee because they're in this absolutely loaded East region. And this is sort of the flip side of UConn getting screwed by the selection committee after they got blown out by St. John's in the Big East title game. Now UConn is the 2 seed in that conference, which would essentially equate to being the number 8 team in the selection committee's eyes. UConn was in contention for the final number 1 seed, and after losing to St. John's, they not only lost that 1 seed, they got booted all the way to the back of the 2 seed line. That is brutal for UConn, but it's also brutal for Duke because now Duke's got to go through UConn at least to make it to Indy. On top of that, in their second, now I expect them to take care of Siena because while that team has played pretty admirably under Jerry McNamara, they're not exactly, they don't exactly match up great with the Blue Devils. But in the second second game, they're going to be playing either TCU or Ohio State. Both teams have been red hot as of late. Bruce Thornton has found a second gear and is bringing the Buckeyes to, I'd say, national prominence. And if they can knock off Duke, that's a big upset, obviously. This Duke team is loaded. They're my national title pick, but I don't think it's completely unreasonable to maybe theoretically predict that to happen, because Duke's got some vulnerabilities. Caleb Foster's injured. Gangba's injured. This is a team that has offensive firepower, yes, but has made their bread and butter on defense. They have elite defenders. Cameron Boozer has elite size and is a formidable interior presence. Malik Brown's one of the best defenders in the ACC. This team is feisty. John Schneider's got them ready to go, but they've got a tough road to Indianapolis. After TCU or OSU, they've got to go and play probably St. John's or Kansas. St. John's has been red hot of late. Kansas, while a bit hit or miss, a bit inconsistent, is a team that has the physicality and defensive prowess to hang with a team like Duke. So, Duke's going to have to run the gauntlet if they're going to go to Indy. A little bit tough for a team that was the number 1 overall seed. All right. Those are the main storylines that I was able to kind of discern among all the madness of Selection Sunday, because it's really an event in and of itself. I've been looking a lot at different sites discussing, the viability of some of these, these 5-12 matchups, some 6-11 matchups, and kind of who's a good upset pick to take there. I've been seeing a lot of people talking about taking Texas Tech to lose to Akron, because Akron's this kind of spicy number 12 seed. They won a MAC conference that somehow got 2 bids because, well, frankly, Miami of Ohio crapped the bed in their opening tournament game versus UMass. But Akron's not a pushover. I just think that Grant McCaslin's a guy whose teams consistently overperform and exceed expectations in March. Texas Tech is always a team that's a tough out in March. I think that's going to continue this year. I don't think they're going to lose to Akron. Don't take the bait. Don't take Texas Tech to lose to Akron, because it's not freaking happening. Akron's out of the MAC. It's a weak conference. I understand that, yes, Miami of Ohio was lethal, but Akron didn't beat Miami of Ohio. This is not a conference to be scared of. Texas Tech is from the Big 12. They're battle-hardened. They're battle-tested. JT Toppin's been out for a while. They've adjusted without him. I just don't think this is a smart play here. There are better upsets to pick in the field. This is not one of them. Texas Tech is advancing past the first round. You heard it from me first. I don't know if this is actually something that's being heavily picked in the national discourse, but High Point is playing Wisconsin. 2 years ago, Wisconsin was in a very similar spot as a 5 seed. They went on a run in the Big Ten tournament. They went to the championship game, lost to Illinois, and then they had to play James Madison. 31-3 James Madison. This year, a little bit of a similar story. Wisconsin gets hot towards the end of the year. They advance all the way to a 5 seed, and now they have to play 30-4 High Point. I just don't think High Point's that good. Initially, as a Wisconsin fan, I saw this result. I saw this by the selection committee, and I was flabbergasted. I was like, what the hell is going on here? But then I looked a little more into it. High Point is 0-2 versus quads 1 and 2. They haven't played a quad 1 game all year. They're only 5-4 against quads 1 through 3. Yes, they are undefeated in quad 4. Good for them. But we're saying 22 of their 31 games came against quad 4 opponents, which just highlights the lack of competitiveness in the Big South. So while High Point has this gaudy record, I frankly expect Wisconsin to take care of them. This may be a trendy upset pick, certainly for people who maybe lack a little bit of literacy here. They see the 30-4 record, they're like 12-5 is a common upset. But I actually think Wisconsin may have gotten the most favorable draw of any of the 5 seeds in this field. So don't take High Point. Wisconsin's winning this game. Some of my favorite picks for this tournament. They involve teams to either win an individual game or teams to win a few games, going on a run to a certain stage in the tournament. I was browsing an unnamed sports book earlier today, and I saw that despite being the weakest number 1 seed, Florida, this wasn't from the sports book, this was from looking at the bracket, but Florida might have the easiest path to the Final Four of any of the 1 seeds. The 2 seed in their region is Houston. Houston has been probably the most disappointing 2 seed I've ever seen. They don't have consistent offensive firepower. Yes, Kingston Flemings is an absolute beast. He's a unit. He's a great freshman, not a unit. He's a prolific scorer, though. This guy puts up points like there's no tomorrow. And Houston always has a good defense. They're always sound under Kelvin Sampson. However, they don't have the offensive consistency that I think lets them hang with a team that's been as hot as Florida over the last couple of months. Florida has the best front court in the country. With Thomas Houck, they've got Alex Condon still. These teams have championship DNA from their run last year. I think Florida's got an easy run to the Final Four. And yet somehow we're still able to get them getting there at plus 170. You'd be a fool not to sprinkle a couple on that one. Another really nice little play I see is Virginia to make the Sweet 16 at minus 140. The Cavaliers have just been playing rock solid ball. They almost took out Duke in the ACC tournament championship. First year coach Ryan Odom has them playing just incredibly measured ball. They don't get too high, don't get too low. They're very, very composed. And with guys like Tice DeRitter and Sam Lewis and Malik Thomas, they're just a very consistent group of guys. They play good defense. They would probably, assuming they beat Wright State in the first round, have to play Tennessee in the second round or the 11 seed. I think barring SMU just getting scorching hot, beating Miami Ohio in the first round and then knocking off Tennessee, I think that's just a walk in the park for Virginia to hop and skip into the second weekend. I think that's a lock, Virginia to make the Sweet 16. Because Tennessee, while they have an elite guard in Nate Ament, is not a team that's consistent enough, I think, to hang with Virginia for an entire game. Virginia's sneaky good. They're a team that, they've got juice. There's a reason they're a 3 seed, and they're probably the most solid 3 seed in my opinion. Also, there's a little bit of a trend here with the ACC typically outperforming expectations and the SEC underperforming. You've got the ACC-SEC matchup. In another ACC-SEC matchup, we've got first-year coach Jay Lucas in the Miami Hurricanes taking on, who are they playing? The 10-seeded Missouri Tigers. Missouri's been struggling of late. I like this Miami team. Trey Donaldson, the point guard transfer from Michigan, has been integral to Miami's success this year. I think they knock off Missouri, and you can get just that single game outcome at minus 125. That's easy money. So those are my 3 favorite picks. Florida to make the Final Four, Virginia to make the Sweet 16, and Miami to win their opening round game against Missouri. It's a lot. I could sit here and talk for probably 4 more hours. I've got this absolutely feisty drink going on, and I'm fired up, folks. I'm so fired up for this game, but for this event. It's 67 games with 68 teams over 3 weeks. It is absolute chaos. It's madness. And I'm going to be here with you every step of the way, reviewing each weekend, previewing the next weekend, and just making sure that this event is possibly the best ever. Are we going to see a lot of chalk like last year? I sure hope not, and I don't expect we will. But keep in mind that while you should be picking upsets in your bracket, do not take Texas Tech to lose to Akron, and don't take Wisconsin to lose to High Point. 2 places where you should not take the bait. All right? It's time to lock in now. We sleep in May. Good luck, everybody.